So earlier today, among the news of Donald Trump's new Supreme Court justice and in reaction to that, we have a pardon. Oh, interesting. Okay. So Donald Trump issued actually a couple of pardons to some ranchers in Oregon. So look, why is this big news? Look, Donald Trump's been doing pardons here and there. He's actually done a fairly good pardon. That he worked on with Kim Kardashian. So what's controversial about this one? Well, let's get into the details, and I will explain why. Now, the two men receiving the pardons are Dwight and Stephen Hammond. That's a father and son duo who, again, they're just simple ranchers in Oregon. Why the media scrutiny? What's so wrong with this one? Well, it turns out that they were imprisoned back in 2012 for arson on federal land. Now, that arson and the subsequent imprisonment based off that arson actually led to something a lot more sinister. It actually led to the armed takeover of the federal wildlife refuge, which was led by Ammon and Ryan Bundy. So that kicked off the Bundy Ranch standoff. Oh boy. So, yeah. So this is significant. Now, look, let's be clear. These guys were not involved in the Bundy standoff because they were in court or in jail. But it's what their imprisonment actually led to that because, the goddamn government overreach. Well, that was a problem apparently Dwight and Stephen Hammond also had with the BLM. Now, let me get into more details, of course. But first, you guys remember the standoff, right? That was when anti-government right-wingers were they were literally aiming guns at police officers. And actually, I believe there was a shootout later on. Not at the actual ranch, but when they tried to go and take over another county in Oregon. It's crazy. Where are the law and order people, by the way? This happened during the Obama administration. What happened to the law and order people? Nobody brings it up. Except to, of course, go and defend the ranchers and say that big, evil, tyrannical government. This is why we need our guns. Oh, Jesus. So, anyway. Now, in his pardon of the Hammonds, the president noted that jurors, quote, dropped most of the original charges against them, even as they found them guilty of 2 arson charges. And I'm going to explain in detail what those charges were. He also said that Hammond's 5-year prison sentence was part of an overzealous prosecution by Obama administration officials, while calling the Hammonds devoted family men and respected contributors to their local communities. Now, as usual with any Trump tweet, you have to, or statement, you've got to look for inaccuracies, and there were a couple. For one, arson charges actually mandate or carry a 5-year mandatory minimum sentence. So if you are convicted of arson, you automatically get 5 years. That's what both Dwight and Stephen Hammond ended up serving, or at least serving most of. I believe Stephen had been serving 3 years and Dwight had served 4, if I recall correctly. So, okay. And the reason that they have that mandatory minimum is that, look, if you intentionally go around setting fires, especially out in the West, well, that can cause some serious damage because that place is already plagued with wildfires. Now, wildfires, of course, ravage the area. They destroy crops, they destroy houses, they endanger people's lives. And so, yes, you got to have a kind of a stiff penalty, especially if you're going and starting those fires on purpose, especially without telling people, right? So that law was on the books, and so where was the overzealous prosecution by the Obama administration? Well, I guess Trump thinks, and these right-wingers think, well, they should just let him go. I mean, go ahead, start fires, do arson. We don't care. It's BLM land anyway. It's the government. No, 5 years I think is actually fair. Now, as far as respected, yes, he's actually correct on that one. Apparently, they are respected in that local area, but they shouldn't be, and here's why. According to court documents, witnesses at the trial, including a relative of the Hammonds, testified that the arson occurred shortly after Stephen Hammond and his hunting party illegally killed several deer on BLM property. So they were hunting on BLM property, and then they shot and killed a herd of deer. Well, congratulations. So that's, like I said, public land, likely without a license or anything like that, maybe not even within season. Don't care. We're going to kill a bunch of deer. And then they thought, oh, shit, we're going to have to pay for that if we get caught. So here's what happened. Jurors were told that Stephen Hammond had handed out strike anywhere matches with instructions that they be lit and dropped on the ground because, quote, they were going to light up the whole countryside on fire. Lovely. One witness testified that he barely escaped the 8 to 10 foot high flames caused by the arson. The fire ended up consuming about 139 acres of public land and destroyed conveniently all evidence of the game violations. Oh, what? No, we didn't shoot those deer. They just spontaneously combusted. Have no idea. What deer? Whew. Well, that's usually why people commit arson, in order to get rid of evidence. Now, after committing the arson, Stephen Hammond then called the BLM office in Burns, Oregon, and claimed that the fire was started on the Hammond's property to burn off invasive species and had inadvertently burned onto public lands. How sad. Likely story. Likely story. Dwight and Stephen Hammond then allegedly told one of their relatives to keep his mouth shut and that nobody needed to know about the fire. And I take back the allegedly, because I'm so used to saying that. But no, but this is actual testimony in court that led to the conviction of these two men. So, look, these guys sound real upstanding, right? Oh no, wonderful people. Devoted family men, and they're respected contributors to the community, in which they nearly burned down. Wonderful. But hey, that's not the only fire that these two men have set. The 2006 Crumbo Butte fire started out as a wildfire, so there was already a wildfire going on, right? But then there were several illegal backburns that were set by the Hammonds with an intent of protecting their winter feed. Okay, look. If you want to do that, okay, go to the BLM and tell them and ask them, hey, man, look, we want to protect our feed from this wildfire that's coming our way. Can we set some backburns? Did they do that? Of course not. Under the cover of night, they set the backfires without warning to the firefighters that they knew were camped in the slopes above. Now, those same fires threatened to trap 4 BLM firefighters. One of those later confronted Dwight Hammond at the fire scene after he had moved his crews to avoid the danger. 2 days later, Stephen Hammond had threatened to flame a BLM employee with arson if he didn't terminate an investigation into that fire. There was an investigation. The charges were eventually dropped. I'm not sure how. But still, you've got people setting fires, unauthorized fires, putting people in danger, hiding game violations. Look, these guys, this is who Donald Trump just pardoned. They don't care about rule of law. And that's the whole point here. Donald Trump says, I'm the rule of law president. I'm law and order president. I care so much about rule of law. But in his time in office, he doesn't give a damn about rule of law. For example, he recently pardoned Joe Arpaio. Joe Arpaio, again, was told by a court, stop profiling Latinos, stop profiling Latinos. What did he do? He profiled Latinos. And so they're like, okay, well, look, you're obviously not following the law. We're going to have to put you in prison. Donald Trump says, nope. Rule of law? I don't care about rule of law. Come on, Arpaio, get out of prison. Here's your get out of jail free card. Oh, Arsonists who actually led to other armed right-wingers going and taking over a federal building? Go ahead. Here's your get-out-of-jail-free card. This is white right-wing privilege. This is right-wing privilege for sure. If you're a member of the far right, if you're a sovereign citizen, which these guys were, if you're a neo-Nazi, a white supremacist, Trump just let you know that he is on your side. I mean, if it wasn't clear before, it's clear now. So do whatever you want, guys. It's fine. Both of you, I'm sure, are fine people. I'll just pardon you later on if you do something wrong. Don't worry. I'll bail you out. Look, in one of his rallies, he said, I'll pay your legal fees. That's an actual thing that he said. Oh, don't worry. If you get in trouble by beating protesters, we're going to come back and I'm going to pay your legal fees for you. Which, of course, he would not because he's cheap and he doesn't actually pay anybody. Unless there's maybe an affair or an abortion. But, you know, that's a completely different story. All this does is embolden fringe crazy supporters of his. I'm not saying all supporters of his are fringe and crazy, but there are a lot of fringe crazy people out there. And a lot of them, many of them, do gravitate towards Donald Trump. And this message of do whatever you want, burn things down, just to spite the government, or to hide your other crimes, well, that's a message that they just received loud and clear. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.